Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today. In a rare moment, I got something very wrong. So in yesterday's video, I tried to talk about events that were happening in Tunisia with basically the information that was available at the time. And turns out that information is only a tiny part of the picture that requires so much more context. So this video is going to be a kind of correction slash addendum slash history lesson, except we're going to do things a little differently. In yesterday's video, I mentioned that I have a Tunisian friend, and he was the one who actually called me out on yesterday's video. And I said, hey, all right, cool. Give me the actual correct information. And so he's basically given me an info dump, and I'm going to share, and with his permission, the screenshots from our conversation so that people can get a real, honest, and authentic Tunisian voice about what's happening in the country that has led to the current state of affairs. So let's begin. It is necessary to do an in-depth review of the past 10 years, so here goes. Ben Ali was a tyrant and his regime was a repressive one, but found support within the economic circles of power of Tunisia. The economy in Tunisia has always been in a stranglehold by about 50 families who have the exclusivity to a great number of highly valuable economic sectors such as banking, car imports, agricultural products, exports, to name a few. These families have always ensured the continuation of their exclusive access by pouring money into politics, be it with Bourguiba, the first Tunisian president, or with Ben Ali. Post-2011 revolution, those same circles of power approached the emerging parties of post-2011 Tunisia with conditional financial support. Ennahda party was the biggest winner of the 2011 elections, and so were the ones who wielded the most influence on the street. It's important to note here that most of the successful parties here are right-wing parties. Right-wing is in traditionalists and conservative. Ennahda has a religious ideology as well, while the others are secular. The center was fragmented, and the left had a minimal presence due to the left party leaders being more at odds with each other than with the right-wing parties. Gee, I wonder where I've seen that before. Result was a hybrid constitution that had a minefield of loopholes within it and a flawed election system. Between 2011 and 2014, Tunisia became borderline unrecognizable. 30,000 of our youth were brainwashed and sent to Syria by a combination of Qatari money and Ennahda covert operations. What he is referring to here is something that I do remember reading about, and actually me talking with him about this years ago, about how Tunisia was actually exporting a large number of new ISIS recruits to Syria and Iraq. It is also important to note here that Ennahda has always had a covert militant wing that it used during the years under Bourguiba and Ben Ali to enact terrorist attacks in Tunisia. They never acknowledged this despite the fact being known by all. That part I didn't know. Thus, militant wing became more active during the years of rule of Ennahda, and 3 political assassinations occurred. The evidence was falsified, the trials kept being postponed, and to this day, we do not know what exactly happened to Beled, Brahmi, and Nagad. 2014 elections, Ennahda lost to Nida and Beji Caid Sebsi, who allied with them for his term as president. Sebsi is the patriarch of one of the 50 families I mentioned earlier. He welcomed Ennahda leaders into the economic circles of power and made agreements with them and allowed them to put their trusty men into positions of power inside the Tunisian administration and government. What ensued was an absolute rape of the economic situation on the average Tunisian. The middle class was squeezed dry. Interest rates skyrocketed to 14%, Tunisian currency was devalued by 200%, our national government debt reached 110%, and our international debt reached 83% of our GDP. To add the cherry on top, Ennahda demanded that those who were mistreated during the Ben Ali era were entitled to reparations, something around $1,000 billion to be paid to 26,000 people. This would effectively bankrupt the country. That is astounding. 2019 elections, Ennahda wins the parliamentary elections with 8% of the eligible vote. The parliament is a mosaic of small number groups. Their popular vote is 540,000 voters out of 3.7 million voters. They failed to form a minority government. Kais Saied, a non-partisan apolitical university profession of constitutional law, wins the presidential election with 75% of the popular vote, around 2.7 million votes out of 3.7 million who participated. Ever since 2013, Kais Saied warned of the loopholes within the constitution and how they could result in power abuse by those in power. He kept accusing Ennahda of turning on the values of the revolution. This was in the past. After Ennahda fails to form a government, Kais Saied appoints a prime minister, as per the constitution, who gets the vote of confidence in parliament. The president's government works for a mere 8 months before being falsely accused of corruption, and a plot to depose the prime minister by parliament starts getting traction. Kais Saied requests that the prime minister resigns, which he does, so Kais can appoint another prime minister, which he does. Mechichi becomes the new prime minister and gets the vote of confidence from parliament and starts working. 2 months in, Mechichi reneges on his loyalties and seeks to please parliament parties by firing ministers who were suggested by the president and appointing ones suggested by the parties. Mechichi mishandled the COVID crisis, failing to get vaccines, failing to get PPE to health professionals, hospitals lack oxygen, people are dying on the streets, economy is in freefall, and the political elites are playing a blame game between each other while people are dying left, right, and center. Not only from COVID, but from various preventable reasons. More on this if you want. I think I'm good right now. This is a lot. This is fascinating. Once again, thank you so much. Shukran. Around last June, I was invited into a Discord server where thousands of young people were having daily debates and organizing in order to protest against the government and the impossible situation they got us into. Ah, Discord servers, where the revolution truly begins. One of the Ennahda party leaders goes public about how if they don't get the promised reparations before July 25th, there will be trouble and social unrest by their supporters. Our movement gains ground, we get organized, and plan to protest against Ennahda and its hegemonic patrons on that same day, the 25th of July being the memorial date of the Republic. Despite the planning and preparation, things escalate and our youngsters break into Ennahda party headquarters all over the country and burn many. The Ennahda supporters promise to retaliate, we promise to escalate, shit is getting dangerously close to a potential civil war. The president activates Article 80 of the Constitution, which allows him to take the necessary measure to handle the impending threat. This is well received by our movement, and we cancel the planned escalation on the condition that audits are performed into the past 10 years' unlawful acts of enrichment by Ennahda members. And this is where we are at the moment. If you have other questions that I may not have answered, let me know. And I thought that was it, but then he actually provided another really important addendum. The political elites were quick to call the Article 80 activation a coup, but they failed to mention that they, the parties, did not set up the Constitutional Court in time as per the Constitution. The Constitutional Court is the failsafe in the case of Article 80 activation. Now they are afraid of the incoming audit, so they're happy to get international support to pressure the president. We, on the other hand, have fuck all to lose. Should Kais Saied renege on the audits and get any grand delusions like Maximilien Robespierre did during the French Revolution, well, we're ready to get back to the streets and get on with our rampage. And so that is a rather in-depth deep dive into both what's happened in Tunisia before the revolution to provide some context, what happened immediately after the revolution, and in the years since that has now led to the current crisis. Now, again, I'm still nervous about, declaring basically a form of power granted by the Constitution for 30 days. Hopefully that ends, like my friend here is saying. The young people will just go back out into the streets, in which case, stay safe and stay strong, young people of Tunisia. You and your Tunisians absolutely deserve better than what you have gotten. But once again, it just shows that the birthplace of the Arab Spring and what was at the time heralded as one of its few success stories really shows how much work still needs to be done. And so I guess really at the end of the day, I'm bothered by two things. One, that I was wrong and man, that's an odd feeling. And number two, that the Tunisians, who literally had to fight against an oppressive state and went out ready to die in the streets against the oppressive Ben Ali regime, still have to fight against their own elected governments that were part of the revolution and claim to be a form of progress and trying to improve the country, have not done any of that. The Tunisian people still need to fight for basic decency and jobs and democracy, despite being one of the successes of the Arab Spring. That's what's bothering me today.